5 NBA Finals is tonight. Denver, one win away from winning the title. Nikola Jokic, big reason for that, as 2 of his record 10 triple-doubles this postseason have come in this series. With another, he'll be the first player to have 3 triple-doubles in a singles finals. And how about his running mate Jamal Murray? He's got 10-plus assists in 4 games this series, making him the first player in league history with double-digit assists in his first career finals game. And as for the Heat, they are shooting 32% from beyond the arc in their 3 losses in this series, making just 8 threes in Game 4. Miami hit 49% of its three-pointers in that Game 2 win. So listen, teams leading 3 games to 1 in the finals, 35-1 all time, with only comeback coming the 2016 Cavaliers. That was against the Warriors. Remember that when they won the NBA Finals? More than half of those teams, those have closed things out in Game 5. But Nuggets coach Michael Malone isn't taking the Heat lightly at all.
We know anything is possible. And that's why, like, my message to our team before we came down to the media in the open portion of practices was our approach has to be that we're down 3-1. You know, they're desperate. We have to be more desperate. They're hungry. We have to be hungrier.
Guys, let's talk some hoops. Swagu joins us as well. All right, Al, so what's at stake, you think, for Jokic in Denver here tonight in Game 5?
Well, it's legacy. It's to me, it's setting a tone for the rest of the Western Conference, the rest of the NBA. They win this championship. I mean, they will be the 4th team in the last 23 years to have just 1 loss in the conference finals and NBA finals. And if I tell you those teams, you'll say one word when I say them. Golden State, San Antonio, and the early 2000 Lakers, they all did what? Repeat as champions. They were all teams that were part of a word Monica liked to use last week in talking about the Nuggets. Dynasty. Yeah, I'll say it, because if you're LeBron James and Steph Curry, you recognize what's going on right now. And you've got to be careful, because you've got to look at your situations and wonder, is my chance for another ring over? Because Denver's going to be in the way. If I'm Kevin Durant, I'm looking in Phoenix. I'm trying to win a chip without Golden State. But I don't know if I can do that, because I don't know if I can build a team good enough to beat this team that has been together for a long time. They have chemistry. They are not getting old. They are just getting started. And oh, by the way, if I'm Luka Doncic, I'm looking at Dallas and I'm wondering, can we build something here as good as what they have in Denver? Because all those teams in the West understand something. You got to get past this team.
Well, to his point, Monica, you look at it, Jokic, Murray, Porter Jr., Gordon, KCP, Bruce Bowen, Christian Brown, all of them under contract for next season. So this entire core is coming back for Denver.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Hahn. I buy it to a degree. I think there are just so many questions about what's going to happen in the Western Conference, but I do think it looks like we're preparing for the road to go at least through Denver. I don't know, and I want to be mindful that we not take greatness for granted. I don't know if this team is poised to be as dynastic as the teams that you mentioned, but I certainly understand why it is absolutely fathomable. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch how the rest of these teams in the Western Conference retool their rosters, fill out their rosters, whatever word you want to use. But I think at the heart of this thing, you look at Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, guys that are relatively young still in their career. They've got a lot of runway. Aaron Gordon. I know last week Wendy mentioned that the new CBA is not friendly to the idea of dynasties.
Keeping teams together.
Yeah. But those 2 in particular are their guys. So I think you're right, but I also wonder if to a degree, like, now that the cat is completely out the bag, if teams are literally building their rosters to beat the Nuggets.
Especially Jokic. You better have a player on your roster that can handle him, and not all the teams we mentioned do. Now, Anthony Davis, Lakers, yes.
Swagu, what do you think is at stake?
I don't know why Hahn did this morning. I don't know why.
Matcha tea, that's
we can't just let them get their first one ever. Like, we can't let them get their first one ever before we start having this conversation. Look, I agree with you. They're going to be in the conversation every single year going forward because of Nikola Jokic and Murray, and obviously keeping their core together. But we know, like, y'all, we know that in an off season in the NBA, it can change immediately. And I'm sure that there are teams, to your point, Hahn and Monica, that are looking for how do we beat this team, and not only how do we beat this team, how do we have a sustainability of success? And when you think about Kevin Durant, right, it's scenarios. KD shows up middle of the season with Phoenix. He'll have more time on task. I'm sure that they'll be looking to add pieces to that roster. They got to get something more out of DeAndre Ayton, or they got to figure out what they're going to do with him coming off of this season that we saw this year. LeBron in the playoffs, got a foot, need an extra player, need a superstar outside of Anthony Davis. And it kind of hurts me to say that. But I don't think AD is enough to carry you throughout a complete playoff series without another star when LeBron James has to sit down. The man was on 1 foot trying to figure out how he was going to beat Nikola Jokic, which nobody could figure out this year. And then we get to this series, and look, for every other superstar, we make an excuse, right? And we talk about, well, this didn't happen. If Draymond wouldn't have got the suspended, LeBron and them wouldn't have came back. If things wouldn't have happened, people are going to say this is an A seed that Denver is beating. They supposed to win the game. Let's get in the dynasty when they start beating teams consistently that we respect, that are built strong, that are at full strength. Let's start having that conversation at that point, Hahn. But I like Denver, and I like what they're doing. But let's give them more than a year to start talking about that.
You know what's so funny? Is Swagu is saying what I said to you last week, and you brought up the idea of this could be the start of a dynasty. I was saying the same thing, but all I had to see was them go to Miami and spank Miami on their home court for 2 games.
But what I'm not
That's all I needed to see. I'm starting to buy in.
And what I'm not going to allow both of y'all to do is act like this team wasn't sitting atop the conference all regular season long and has only dropped a single game. So like, hold up. Like, we're not going to do the 8th seed thing with Miami either. Like, I'm not going to allow
You're not buying it? Well, because they were actually a 7th seed that fell to 8.
We're not. Swagu, come on now. We're not going to do that. This team, 8th seed, if this team was playing the way they played in the postseason, they are not an 8th seed, Swagu. Like,
let's take a beat for a second before we start having a conversation about the Denver Nuggets being a dynasty, especially with how the landscape in the NBA can change with one player movement or one team doing something different. I understand what y'all say. Look, Jokic ain't going nowhere. Murray ain't going nowhere.
Swagu.
When you got a core.
I'm sorry, Swagu. I got Pete McConville on line 1. Dynasty is all we're talking about today. Please cut Swagu's mic. Sorry, we're here.
God,
we are here, Swagu. We get it. They got to get the first one. We get it. But we are now talking about the big picture.
It is also recognizing again. I think the question was what's at stake.
Let me
what's at
wipe
stake?
my forehead.
You got it sweating. You got it sweating. We only 9 minutes in. Not even 9 minutes into the show. Swagu already. The basketball heat. We're bringing it. Hey, listen. I'm telling you, that's what I'm looking at. Is what is at stake. Is what we're seeing. And I'm looking at Denver, and I'm watching what they did over the weekend. Right. I'm watching what they did heading into this Game 5 now that sets them up for their first championship. And that's the reaction I get is I'm not thinking about what, like, I know we're saying dynasty, right? We're doing this whole thing about how they can be a team that wins. I'm just comparing what they're doing this year
which is a good comparison.
to other teams in the last 23 years, and all of them turned out multiple championships. This is a tone-setting kind of thing that Denver is doing. And I'm not talking about Denver. I'm talking about everybody around them. I'm talking about how Phoenix does have Booker and KD. They also have a new coach, and they've got to fill out a bench that clearly wasn't deep enough to handle them. I'm looking at AD and LeBron in LA, and they've got to figure it out too. Do they have enough? Is Anthony Davis going to come back in elite shape so he can take on Jokic?
Listen,
the Golden State Warriors, all of them have to look at this team and go, how are we beating them?
Listen, playoff Jimmy Buckets, whatever you want to call him, he's averaging just under 22 points this series. His fewest in any playoff series over the last 2 seasons. And he hasn't been able to really close out games as effectively lately as his fourth quarter scoring average has been cut nearly in half this series. Jay Will is with us. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
He can't even.
No,
He's good.
I see you. Not today, baby. Not today. Not with these hands. Not with these hands.
Based off of what you just saw, what does Jimmy Butler have to do if he's going to extend, and the Heat are going to extend this series?
Be aggressive from the opening. And here's my thing about, like, this is a team sport. I get that Max Strus has had 2 donuts in 4 games, right? I get that Gabe Vincent is 2 of 14, over the last 2 games. You obviously need your other players to play better. But at the end of the day, a Game 5 closeout scenario on the road is when your star player sets the tone. What's that 2-1-1 theory that I hear NBA circles talk about in the playoffs? Your best player needs to win you 2 games.
Yeah.
Your second best player needs to win you 1 game. And your role players win you that last 1 game, right? That's 4 games. Jimmy Butler is yet to take over a game and win the Miami Heat a game. That's what you need tonight on the road.
What are your thoughts?
Yes, but I don't know that that means he's going to drop 50 a la the Bucks series. And so I think we have to allow some room for some flexibility in terms of what this team needs in the moment and what it looks like for them to execute at a high level. I don't know that it's solely going to be based on points. Does he need to be better than he has been? Most likely.
Can you see, like 3 years ago, remember Game 5 bubble Jimmy, where he played all but, 48 seconds, had that triple-double? Could we see that kind of performance?
This is what we're doing. We're going bubble now.
Yeah.
We're going bubble. Bubbles burst. Okay, bubbles burst. Because this performance, this playoff Jimmy that we've been waiting for, probably should have come in Game 4. I mean, that was the bigger game to see him show up in. But Jay, what you said, though, about that's what stars do, that's what leaders do. Kyle Lowry said this about Jimmy Butler during this is earlier in the playoffs. He said, when Jimmy comes out aggressive, it's a different team. It's a different mentality. We play off him. And that's what a leader does. That's what a franchise player does. That's what a megastar does. That's what should have happened in Game 4. It tells you that Jimmy probably doesn't have that in him, whether it's the ankle that he injured in the Knicks series in the second round or something that the Nuggets are doing that's not allowing him to be that guy. But this playoff Jimmy that we're thinking might show up in Game 5 on the road in a closeout game should have been there for Game 4, and he wasn't. And so that kind of makes you wonder, can he conjure playoff Jimmy again?
Are you giving the Heat a chance at all tonight?
No. No, this is a wrap. We said this. If they had lost Game 4, the series was over. I think all of us kind of agreed on that. Series is over.
Monica?
No, I think the Heat win tonight.
You think the Heat win? In Denver?
I had this thing going to 6. I just think when you look at their run, we've counted them out over and over. And ultimately, I do think Denver's going to win this thing, so I guess I'm continuing to count them out as well. But I don't think you put together 2 terrible performances from the Heat. Like, I just think there's too much pride. There's too much culture. I think they figure it out. Listen, when their backs have been against the wall, they've managed to show up. And here they are. So,
Monica, why wasn't their backs against the wall in Game 4 at home?
I hear you.
Facing a 3-1 deficit going on the road. If there was ever the game, though,
because it actually
backs
wasn't
against the
the
wall, that's
elimination
it.
game. Because it wasn't actually an elimination.
Come on now.
What about
But
you?
virtually.
Give
I mean, listen, I feel you, but I think they win tonight.
You give him a chance?
I give them a chance, but I think Denver finds a way to win the game in a barn burner down the stretch.
Wow.
I do, because
Like
I see Gabe Vincent. I don't see that same shooting performance,
they're not
Monica,
gonna
like
do
you
that
said. I don't think Max Strus will have a donut. I think they'll get pushed and they'll play with a sense of urgency. I just wonder if that sense of urgency and that push, it's a little bit too late.
Do you see what you guys are doing? You guys are depending on winning a championship on undrafted players.
First of all,
This is what
What
you're
are you guys
asking
doing? I
now.
don't
Gabe
understand what you
Vincent
guys are
and Max Strus, they're the ones that are going to carry this team. This has to be Bam. It has to be Jimmy. It has been Bam, but it has not been Jimmy.
Yeah,
they
but-
need him tonight.
Okay, but you can't separate who they have on their roster. We all agree Jimmy needs to be the head of the snake. But when you talk about three-point shooting, you're not talking about Jimmy as a three-point shooter. You're talking about those guys going from 30.
How do you get those threes open?
Wait, I'm
Because
confused.
he's on so much
We
defense.
agree.
You guys are really into
We
it.
agree.
I like
He just
seeing.
wanna
I
argue.
like
It's
this.
fine. Go
I
ahead,
like
Jay.
seeing y'all argue. What do you mean, you guys? I picked Denver to win tonight.
Yeah, well,
I understand, but what you're talking about is how do the Heat win? Well, if Miami wins tonight, if playoff Jimmy shows up. If he is not there
what
tonight,
what does playoff Jimmy look like for you?
What I just read from Kyle Lowry.
No,
it's the
give me
guy
the
that,
stat line,
like
'cause
Jay
that's what you wanna
said
go to.
at the start. Well, no, it's like again, it's 30 obviously and plus. It's going to have to be a guy that's also getting a ton of rebounds because that's important for him to get out. And
Lock
do
up
what he
Jamal
does.
Murray.
And
Lock
the
up
defense.
Jamal
We
Murray
all know
from
it's
the
there, but
beginning.
you said it. He has to set the tone early.
Agreed.
He has not
We all
done that
agree on
in
it.
this series.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, look at the numbers. They preach it right there. Now, what it leaves the door open for is if it's one of the greatest ever, you could probably say maybe not because of who he went against to get the numbers to a degree. Because who you play does matter. Does it not matter? Like, are we not going to say, like, if you're going through a list of individual great bigs, that we're not going to look at the run differently if he's putting up those numbers against other great bigs? I mean,
Anthony Davis.
Okay.
Carl Anthony Towns.
Okay.
DeAndre Ayton.
Did you just look at me with a real face on live TV and say that out loud?
Right. I was just giving the list.
You don't believe that. You just say, I take that one back.
I didn't say it with my chest. I did not say it with my chest. I just
giving the list.
I kind of threw it.
We're just
So
offering.
yeah, statistically, yes. And I'm the hugest Jokic fan. Like I'm the one that's been on Denver for the past 2 years.
You have.
I'm saying if you're looking at it though, comparing it historically to other incredible runs, you can sit there and say, well, who you play against does factor into that when you're countering it against the others, correct?
Could have said that about Will Chamberlain almost every year he played. But this is better. This is better statistically than what Will Chamberlain did in '67 when he won a championship. Doing the same thing, dominating every single statistic. And Nikola Jokic is actually better than him.
Okay.
So what he's doing is historically, statistically, yes, one of the greatest runs. But you're right, though. When you're watching, do you say, who's he really going up against? And then that's when you can bring up the thing I brought up last week, and I got jumped on for it, which is basically you'd be beating 3 play-in teams to win a championship, and that's never happened before.
This play-in asterisk in our history book is really going to be a doozy.
That or the bubble, which is worse.
So if that's the case, then the one thing we've been talking about at the top of the show, do you see the Nuggets and Jokic staying atop the West here for the next couple of years?
See, this thing in the Western Conference is an arms race because if James Harden goes to the Phoenix Suns, you're going to be having a different conversation. Right? If you're talking about James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker, you're looking at Denver as still being there as a contender.
Sure.
But will they be an NBA championship every single year? That depends upon what other moves are being made. But I think they are there to stay as a team knocking on the door.
But don't you think, Jay, that Phoenix, Lakers, Golden State, and even Dallas has to look at what's happening in Denver? See, this is not a group that's going to, this isn't a one and done. This is a team that has been kind of cultivated to this point, won't go away, and you got to now figure out how you're going to build a team that can take them on in a 7-game series.
Think about payroll, though. I mean, you got 3 max players, Michael Porter Jr., you got Aaron Gordon getting a lot of money. You got Bruce Brown, who's going to be a free agent. He's going to go test the market. I think he's going to get more money somewhere else. So Calvin Booth has his hands full now. He's going to try to fill them in, and they're going to get taxed heavily.
He's got Walmart money.
How you do that moving forward is going to be critical.
That's that Walmart money. That's all right. Deep pockets.
If they had been healthy the last 2 seasons, are we talking about number 2?
Are we talking about, what do you mean?
For the Nuggets, if they had been healthy the last 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah, we might have been.
Think so? I'm trying to think about that this weekend.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.